Why did you come here? What questions would you like answered about the history of Ethernet?
We were basically having fun building our own tools, and then it got out of hand. The most significant fact about the human race is we are now connected. So let's hear it for connectivity.
Welcome to the stage, Bob Metcalfe and Anil Varanasi.
One of the great privileges of my job is I get to learn from people that I've admired for decades. Last night, Sunil and I were having dinner with Bob, and we were telling him how many people are excited to see him, and he didn't believe me at all. He's like, "You're probably making it up," but...
Well, I'm really humble.
Maybe there's like three sections I want to cover. I think Bob was part of the original crew that made Silicon Valley. Then obviously the work he did in networking with Ethernet, and then how he thinks about what's happening today. So Bob, you were mentioning last night, you got to Silicon Valley, 68, 72, if I remember the dates correctly?
Arrived in 72.
What was that like? What was the energy like? Because, every decade people think they're doing the best work. It's the most exciting time. All the times before were maybe not as exciting, and this is the time. But what was it like in 72 coming to...
Well, there's a lot fewer buildings, and there was an elevated highway that went right across, and it's gone now. And I came from Boston, and I saw immediately the difference between Boston and the Valley. The Valley was more... In the Valley, your first question isn't, what colleges did you go to? In Boston, that's the standard. Right. Well, they have so many colleges there that I guess...
Yeah.
And it was very adventurous, and I really liked it a lot.
What was like the first big project you worked on when you got here?
I had by then gotten into networking, and Xerox Research at Palo Alto asked me to put Xerox on the ARPANET, which is Internet 1.0, I call it. And so I spent a few months.
Yeah.
I did it at MIT, and then I did it here too. But then I got lucky, because then Xerox decided to build the world's first personal computer. And we looked around the room, and who's the networking guy? Me. And so I got the job. I got the job of designing this network.
And how many networking guys were there at that time? Was it like 10 people?
Maybe if you count all the universities, UCLA,
yeah,
SRI, Xerox, MIT, Harvard, 50 people.
Yeah. And what did networking mean at that time? I know there was this like ARPANET with Licklider and everyone that was trying to do it. And what did it mean? What were you trying to do?
Well, then the first stage, this was the first stage of the internet. The goal was to connect dumb terminals together. And the killer app was that this guy, Bob Taylor at ARPA, had 3 dumb terminals, one for each of his projects. And he wondered out loud, why do I have 3 identical terminals? Why don't I just have one and you guys network them together so I can log into any place in the world? So we built a network so you could log in anywhere, but it was all dumb terminals. And that's where Ethernet came in. In the transition from dumb terminals to personal computers, that was Ethernet's role. It was not a dumb terminal network, it was a PC network.
And how did Ethernet come about? Like the name, the standard, what's the story behind it? Like how did it happen at all? And was it electric when you did it? Like, did you know what you were doing?
Well, yeah. So Dave Boggs and I, may he rest in peace, were building this first Ethernet. And eventually we wanted to have no wires. We wanted to do Wi-Fi, but we didn't call it that. and we couldn't. We found out that the modems for the radios were this big and the PCs were this big, so we couldn't do that. So we decided to use coaxial cable, but we didn't want to call it coax net because we had a hunch that there would be other media that would be better than coax. This is half-inch coax. And so we didn't call it coax net, but there was this word from physics, the ether, the luminiferous ether, carrying light from the sun to the earth, proven not to exist. And so it was passive, and it was omnipresent, and it was a medium for the propagation of electromagnetic waves. Perfect name for our network, Ethernet. So it was named in a memo on May 22nd, 1973.
What did people think when they heard the name? Because are they like, this doesn't make any sense, or was everybody like enthralled with it right away?
Well, Ethernet's early days were not easy. There was a lot of fighting and competition and so on. And one of our opponents was a physicist, and he was familiar with the word ether. So, clever person that he was, decided to use this as a counter argument. Your network, it's even named after a discredited physics principle. Oh, yes.
And when the spec was first sort of coming, what was the process like for it to become a standard? Because I think so many competing standards were coming. There were sort of these LAN wars that were happening. What was that like on how it became the standard?
So we built Ethernet, and we built an internet inside of Xerox. And then I left to pursue entrepreneurial ambitions.
Yeah.
And hooked up with Digital Equipment Corporation, which was then the second largest computer company. And they wanted me to build an Ethernet for DEC. And I refused because I was loyal to Xerox. I don't know where that thought came from. And then one day I got DEC and Xerox and Intel to work together to make a network that they could use to interconnect their products. And lawyers arrived and wouldn't let us meet because this meeting would clearly be in restraint of trade under the antitrust law.
Right.
So I called my fraternity brother, Howard Charney, who was at that time a patent lawyer. He became 3Com's head of manufacturing, but Howard had sued IBM. So he knew how to have a meeting that was not in restraint of trade. So I called the lawyers back and said, we can meet now because our goal will be an open standard. And there'll be government advisors watching us do this. And so we created a project at IEEE 802. And in that project standardized Ethernet, IEEE 802.3. And then the wars started. IBM and General Motors were not going to let us make a standard, so they joined the LAN wars, which took 10 years of my life. And the IEEE courageously standardized Ethernet, IBM token ring, and General Motors token bus. So it took us 20 years to kill the other two.
Why was it important for it to be an open standard? Because you guys could have kind of done it different ways. Why was it so important?
Interesting you would ask that question. It seems so obvious. If the goal of the technology is to connect things, having it be open, doesn't that sort of encourage you to connect things?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that simple. For connectivity, you want standards because then you get connectivity from it.
Did you all imagine that sort of every PC, everything would have an Ethernet port built in when you were doing this? Or what was that like? Because so many PC companies also grew because of networking.
Yeah, so, the person who most embodied the answer to your question was Andy Grove, who at the time was CEO of Intel.
Right.
And he was a big backer of Ethernet. And I didn't know why. And he explained it to me. He believed that the more bandwidth there was, the more microprocessors would be needed to process it.
Interesting.
So he viewed the standardization of Ethernet as a step toward selling more microprocessors.
And there were two other companies I think were some of your largest customers at 3Com for this, Sun and then Apple. What were those relationships like, and how did those grow? Because Apple had Apple Talk.
So Steve called me in June of 1979. I had just founded 3Com Corporation. It was just me.
Yeah.
And my phone rang. And by the way, the phone was attached to the wall by a wire. I don't know what. And I was sitting at a typewriter typing my daily log, and the phone with the wire rang. And there was a guy from named Steve at a company called Apple in a town called Cupertino. And I hadn't heard of any of those three. And he was looking for a networking guy to join Apple. And I had just started 3Com the week before. So we agreed to have lunch at this hippie restaurant in, in Cupertino. I forget the name of the street. And so he's recruiting, and he's a fierce recruiter, and I'm selling. I had devised a network for the Apple II. And now pay attention. I called it Orchard. Just Steve did not immediately embrace that marketing idea. But then Steve did a very nice thing. When I told him I was determined to run my own company and not join his, he helped me. He didn't get mad. He didn't, throw one of his fits. He helped me for the next 15 years to build 3Com. And he's the one who said, you're going to raise venture capital. You should buy an Apple II and use this insanely great software called VisiCalc. And so 3Com's business plan was VisiCalc. Right. The funny thing was VisiCalc didn't have the capability of consolidating months into quarters or years. So my business plan had 60 months of every product that I had proposed. By month, 60 months. And the VCs laughed.
I think so many people know you as a great engineer, but maybe one thing people don't know is you were the head of sales for 3Com, and you sort of led the charge a lot of times. Why did you make that switch, and why was that important to do that?
Well, many shifts are done out of desperation. So we had raised some venture capital, and we were spending it, and I had projected when Ethernet would be adopted, and I was off by about 6 months. So my board, which I had carefully constructed, said, maybe you shouldn't be CEO anymore. And Bill Krause, he should take over. And so he did. And I went into a week-long funk, but then came back, unlike other founders I know. And the company was so desperate, they made me head of sales and marketing, a measure of our desperation. And the theory there was having embedded Ethernet, I could get appointments with people. And so it was personal selling. But then after a few months of that, I recruited 6 regional managers to be our sales force. And I took us to $1 million a month, and then we went public. In those days, you had to be profitable to go public. And so times change. In our IPO, which was in March of 1984, Morgan Stanley was our banker, and we raised $11 million.
Big numbers.
Yeah, that's an A round here.
I think one of the other things you guys did very deliberately, I think came from you, is using the channel to grow when the large companies weren't looking. What was that like? How did that come about? Why did you decide to do that?
We had this card that you could plug into a PC and put it on a network. And I took our 6 salespeople and we went out and called on all the people who buy computers. And we discovered that they were all IBM employees. Not formally, but they owed their whole life to IBM. So they weren't going to buy anything from us. So we made a smooth move. We were lucky. At that time, a thing called computer retail was getting business land, computer land, a lot of lands. And so we decided to go, our channel strategy was to sell through the retail channel into businesses, and it worked. And so we went around IBM's army of salespeople.
How did normal people understand Ethernet? They go buy a computer, it's plugged in the first time they're using it. What did you hear, maybe friends and family? What was that like on how they perceived it? Did they understand what was going on? Or they're just like, I just want to get online or connect something. But what was the zeitgeist back then?
So they would say, what are you working on? I say, well, I'm working on a network called Ethernet. Oh, interesting. What's it used for?
Right.
And then I would say, it's very general purpose. It can do lots of things, lots of different things. It can carry packets of all kinds and nothing. Then I learned to say, so you need a killer app. So we had a killer app. We listened to our customers. PFMTS. You buy Ethernet and you can PFMTS. Share a printer, P. Share files. IBM was then shipping a 20 megabyte disk, and no one knew what to do with all that storage. So we offered a way to share it, PF, and then M is mail,
Right.
and then T was terminal connections, and S was stubs, which was the word for API at the time. People bought that. So instead of saying it's good for everything, we named specific things. Printers cost, by the way, the Apple laser printer cost $7,000, so it made sense to share it. So PFMTS, and that it took off from there.
When was like the takeoff moment? Was that late 80s, early 90s, or
We went public in March of '84.
Yeah.
And so the 80s were the heyday of networking. And we're returning to the heyday of networking. Networking is coming back now. It's got eclipsed by this AI thing.
We'll get to that.
We're going to eventually get to AI.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like saying that word, so I'll let you say it.
Artificial intelligence. Would you like to know the title of my thesis from MIT in 1968?
Okay, let me set this up. Okay. So he was not in networking at all. He was trying to do other things. And his advisor was probably one of the greatest computer scientists of all time, Marvin Minsky. Okay, you can go.
So I got Marvin to be my undergraduate thesis advisor at MIT in 1968. And at the time, I was the captain of the MIT tennis team. And coming back from Vermont one evening, the day before the thesis deadline, I'm in the yellow school bus writing this dissertation that was due the next morning in Marvin's office. I presented it I made the deadline. He accepted it, but he didn't like it. So instead of recruiting me to join his AI lab, he sent me down the hall to work with JCR Licklider on a thing called the ARPANET. So Marvin got me into the networking business, and it's worked out.
I would say.
Here?
Yeah. So it took off in the 80s, and then 90s was just all this build out of fiber and telecom. What was that like when all this telecom was getting laid out? Primarily go connect computers, right? And what was that energy like? And
Well, it got pretty exciting. I used to run conferences during that period, and I ran one called Vortex, which was for the suppliers of fiber and the ISPs and so on. After that conference, 4 of my speakers went to jail for fraudulently promoting the internet.
right.
The guy from AT&T, Bernie Ebbers, they all went to it's very odd to have a conference where your attendees go to jail. But we succeeded.
None of you, hopefully.
But what happened was this bubble caused a lot of fiber to be strung.
Right.
And then when it collapsed, the fiber was still there, and you could light it. The term was light it up. So it was sitting there dark, and then so we had this flywheel effect that got us to the real internet. I mean, the internet during that bubble was growing, just wasn't growing at this huge rate.
What was your first favorite like app on the internet when you were using it, and like when you first started using it a lot?
PFMTS.
After that.
After that,
Internet 1.5.
So I was publishing a magazine called InfoWorld, and I had to give an award. As the publisher, I gave an award for the app of the year, and I decided that this web thing called Mosaic up at Illinois, right? So I decided to give the InfoWorld award to Mark Andreessen. So I went to Illinois And by the time I got there, he was gone. And I kept wanting to give the award to somebody, and I couldn't find anybody. It turned out Illinois had behaved very badly. And so he stormed off and came here. I remember running into him in Atherton at the computer store there on El Camino. And he was forming Netscape. And he wanted to call it Mosaic, but Illinois wouldn't let him.
Right.
That was
the whole kerfuffle.
that's really stupid.
Yeah. And, throughout the years in technology, the last 40, 50 years, the word sort of bubble gets thrown around a lot. Even today with all the build out that's happening, did you all know when all the fiber build out was happening that it was like clearly going to be a bubble? And reception, like for folks like you who had seen the 80s leading up to the 90s and 99?
Do you think AI is some sort of bubble?
I'm not answering that question.
So one of my life's endeavors is the innovation process. And I've concluded that bubbles are an innovation tool. They cause innovations to occur that might not otherwise.
Right.
And the important thing is when the music stops, you need a chair. So they are a tool, but you need to play them properly so you don't end up without a chair. So I'm a big fan of bubbles. Just have a chair.
You heard it here. Big fan of bubbles.
Yeah.
You were part of, when we talked about Minsky earlier, probably one of the first labs that was thinking about neural networks. I think your thesis had that.
Oh, I forgot to say.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Anyway, this thesis that Marvin accepted but didn't like, the title of this 1968 thesis was A Neuron Model and Some of Its Information Processing Capabilities. And what that means is I've been watching AI go like this since 1968. It's been going like this, and then it goes like this. So it's over here now, right?
Right.
It's getting ready to go.
Okay. I believe.
So connectivity should be the hot thing, not AI.
Yeah. Tell me more. We were talking about that dinner at last night, how you're saying, usually people latch onto these apps, but how important connectivity is. And what we saw in the video, you were saying that's something we should all be proud of. What's your view there? How did you form that view?
Connectivity is so important, it's even more important than AI. Or it is AI. Remember, neural network, the word network, that's one of our words.
Right.
And it's over there in AI land. So you could argue that AI is a connectivity app. And the connectivity in question is the 10 to the 11th neurons, 10 to the 4th per neuron synapses. We just need another, I forget the number now, 1.6 tera parameters, and then we'll have human intelligence due to connectivity. So connectivity is hot, not AI in particular.
Yeah. You teach today at UT. You taught at Stanford before that. Do you think this last two generations of folks you helped teach, do they understand that? Like on how much connectivity is the basis of all these things? Or what do you see from your students?
The internet is going through a dark period now where almost everything is being blamed on it, and wrongly blamed on it, I think. And there's this one chart that I need to get updated that shows the number of people on Earth and the number of people living in poverty on Earth starting in 18-something. And the curve goes like this, looks like a nice exponential. And then in 1985, for the first time in the history of the world, it goes like this.
Right.
And I claim that's the impact of the internet in reducing poverty in the world. And the internet's a good thing, not a bad thing.
What do you hope to see from connectivity, internet, networking for the next, let's say 10 years? What are some ideas that you're like, how is nobody still doing this? Or
well, I think networks should be built, not bought. And thank you. And I'm really looking forward to autonomous networks.
You were just messing with me now.
Next big thing. and one of my pet peeves is that edge on the connector that sticks out, and so you could tear your clothes on it like that. That's gone. That's been handled now.
You can see why he used to be a great interviewer, because he's better at this than I am.
No, you're not too bad. You're not too bad. Look, you have notes and everything.
I'm acting like I have notes.
Oh, I see.
It just makes me look good.
So, does anyone want to know why the first Ethernet ran at 2.94 megabits per second?
Yeah. We all do.
Well, it's a valuable lesson, actually. So Dave Boggs and I were given the job of building Ethernet for this coming PC down in Palo Alto called the Alto. And this card they gave us could hold 60 chips. So these chips in those days were 14-pin dual inline packages with 2 flip-flops on them or something. But we had to get the network built on this card. And we got almost done, and it was time to put the clock on the card. When you put this packet on the cable, you had to clock it onto the cable so it could wiggle its way down the cable. And we discovered we had no more room on the card. It was full of chips, and we didn't have a clock. But then we noticed that there was a pin on the back plane of the Alto that was the system clock of the Alto, and it ticked every 170 nanoseconds. And we were planning to use Manchester encoding, which is 2 transitions per bit. That's 340 nanoseconds per bit. And if you do the inverse, 340 nanoseconds turns out to be 2.94 megabits per second. So here I am sitting with my Texas Instruments Silent 700 term, 300 bits per second. And in comes my Ethernet connection, which was, I'll just use a round number, 10,000 times faster. Not 10%. Were you talking about 10% earlier in this?
Yeah, unfortunately. Same big numbers like you. Yeah.
This was 10,000 times faster. And so that, for the first time, made bandwidth abundant and possibly made it economical to upload cat pictures. But I was on a panel once where there was a 1,200 baud guy and a 2,400 baud guy and me. And they got into an argument about whether you really needed 2,400 bits per second, whether 1,200 was plenty. Because, you know, with 1,200, the characters would go like this up the screen faster than you could read them. So why would you need a modem to run 2,400 bits per second? And then it was my turn to talk, and I said 2.94 megabits per second. And then there were a lot of questions like, what would you use that for? And then I eventually learned to give my PFMTS answer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bob.